Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. I'm going live right now because again, I was debating, can I make this a reel? Can I make this a short kind of a video, but it's not gonna work. So I'm like, I'm gonna go live and there we go. I want to talk about vibrato today because it's been something that's really been on my mind. And like I said, I don't know really how to condense it into a small short video that's misunderstood. So I thought I'm going to go live and talk about this. So I don't know if you were ever told this, but as a young singer, I remember there being a very big emphasis on vibrato and making sure that the line was spinning. And this wasn't just in regards to myself and my own training. This was me listening to coaches and teachers and what they were telling my colleagues. So it wasn't necessarily my own personal experience, but what I witnessed. And that continued kind of a lot, like, spin the line, vibrate on every pitch, make sure there's vibration, keep it going. That's what creates the legato. And I guess we could say in one sense that might be correct, right? But I think it gets misinterpreted a lot. And then some problems happen in terms of the balance of the voice. And so it's important to distinguish what kind of vibrato you have, and is it the helpful kind or is it the kind that throws you out of balance, right? And so this is really, really hard when your voice is younger, okay? And by younger, I mean 20s, all right? Like before the laryngeal cartilages have really solidified, the muscles are trained. It's very easy to sort of determine what kind of vibrato is going on past the upper 20s. But when you're in your early 20s or your mid 20s, it is a little bit more difficult. I will say that for sure. And it's difficult even for teachers to hear that and hear the balance as being correct or maybe a little bit off balance. And what I'm talking about is there is what we have inherent in a tone that maybe we could call spin or sheen on the voice, a beauty that's kind of in there, right? And it's almost like top spin. So if you think about the pitch, we have a pitch like a sine wave, right? And then we have these overtones that come up, okay? So it's very important that we know what to listen for. And, I can post some examples of what I mean. But I think if you watch my page, you know the kind of singing that I'm interested in and which I think is physiologically correct. Let's put it that way, okay? Physiologically correct. Maybe artistically we can talk, one way or the other. But I do think that there is a way to sing that feels really great and enables you to sing difficult repertoire, right? Because just to go off on a little tangent, when you look at the scores, especially in the bel canto era, and you look at, and even think early Verdi, right? You look at all of this stuff that was written, and a lot of times now, even really great singers who are singing all over the place, they struggle with a lot of elements of the scores, right? And I always ask myself, well, composers were just consistently writing like this in this time period. Were they really just trying to mess with the singers? No, I don't think so. I think it was very usual to sing this way and it was easy, right? So why I say that is because this is going to go into our discussion about vibrato a little bit. So essentially, there is a way to sing that's physiologically comfortable and it enables you to do things with your voice that maybe you couldn't do if it were in a different position. Let's put it like that, okay? So when we come back to vibrato, we have this pitch, right? And then we have this sheen on the voice, okay? It's an element to the voice, and yes, it does undulate a little bit in pitch and frequency, for sure. It doesn't hold like a sine wave, right? So that's the difference between the sine wave and the human voice. But, there is, and this is really, really difficult, like I said, to tell before it goes off balance. But there are ways to create vibrato that are not the natural, it's not the natural vibrato that's made from like a free and functioning instrument, but it can sound similar. And that's from a destabilized larynx. Okay, so if you imagine the larynx, right? If you're not learning how to tilt and stay in that head dominant resonance throughout your range, right? And I'm talking about even tenors, baritones, okay? And when I say head dominant, I don't mean head voice. What I mean is that there's musculature, right? The CT muscle, that is kind of directing, that's sort of steering the car, so to speak, right? And that should be the case in absolutely every voice type, because really even low basses, you don't want an unturned sound. It's not going to have the subtlety and the nuance that you would want, right? So again, it's so hard to separate elements of the voice, which is why I'm going live and not making a reel. So vibrato, right? It's related to this muscle, because if we're coming in and out of that position, and I can demonstrate here, if I did something like, oh, that's not correct, because I can feel, if I put my hand right here, I can feel the muscle is spasming, okay? Conversely, if I, oh, there's still vibrato, but I think you can hear the difference, right? One is, oh, and you can actually feel the cartilage move. Oh, the other is a creation because the CT muscle is engaged. There's no instability in the larynx. There's no pressure around the voice. And so there's a natural vibrancy there. Okay. So what can really happen is that we start doing the one that I just demonstrated where I said it was not quite correct, right? It wasn't physiologically correct. Let's put it that way, because some really great singers, I mean, I'm even talking Beverly Sills, okay? So I mean like really great singers have gotten into this function, and for a while it can sound really nice. In some voices, it can sound really nice for a time, right? But we're talking about physiological effects. Just like, you've heard things like you should lift heavy objects with your leg muscles, not with your back muscles, right? Well, some people can lift with their back muscles for a while and everything's fine. Other people, they do it once and they're out, right? So there's a little bit of, there's a curve of who could do this and how long that can last and how good it sounds, right? Some people can't do it at all. It will sound terrible. Some people can do it their whole careers and only maybe at the very end does anything go out, right? So I'm not talking about artistic merit so much as I'm talking about function of the voice, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you sound like, Pavarotti or Callas in the early years. If you don't feel comfortable in your throat getting up on stage and singing, then that's not going to make for a very artistically gratifying performance for the audience or for yourself. So you have to feel comfortable with what you're doing, right? And that's really the bottom line, okay? But let's just say, there can be times where this kind of function does start to affect the quality that you're delivering as a singer. And I will say that happens much more times than not. So to assume you're in the exception is probably not the best way to go. So when you're looking at these issues with vibrato, right? And if you start to notice that that is happening in your voice, you should notice and again, it can happen on one note, right? That's kind of a different story. But if this is kind of the standard pattern for your voice and how it's operating from a base level, and that you're noticing that the cartilage is shaking on each pitch, regardless of what it sounds like yet, right? Like I said, most people maybe won't sound the best doing that, but let's just say you're singing at a very high level, singing all over the place, and everybody likes your sound, but you do notice this. it's something just to make a note of, because this shows you that there is instability in the musculature. And that's something you probably want to fix so that it doesn't start going out of hand and start causing problems that you just don't need, right? So there's a variety of ways to fix it. It's not really, because each person has a different reason that's causing that instability. It can be support related. It can be weakness in the CT muscle. It can be singing too heavy. It can be not singing quite in the right resonance. There's so many reasons that it's impossible for me to say it here, right? But I will say that if you do notice that kind of vibrato where the cartilages are shaking, regardless of what it sounds like, I would seek to work that out, okay? So either on your own or with the teacher or some other ears that you trust, because that is going to ultimately cause the decline of the voice earlier than it would if you take care of that. So again, vibrato is a really great health indicator of the voice, the registrational balance, and how things are functioning physiologically, how comfortable they are, right? So use that as a barometer to help you and to figure out, what you want to do. And there's no shame in it. I'm so tired. Another video I would like to make at some point is this idea of like vocal technique and singers who say, oh yes, once I learned my vocal technique and now I'm all set. I'm like, okay, so you went to the gym and then you stopped going to the gym? Like, I don't quite get it. Vocal technique is not like something you learn up here. Can be, right? In the beginning, maybe it's few concepts that you need to learn mentally. But vocal technique is actually staying in physical shape. That is what vocal technique is. And you can constantly refine your vocal technique. What it's more like is like going to the gym, right? And if you're lifting weights, especially if you're lifting free weights, you may want to either use a mirror or have a trainer to help you and make sure you're really doing the right form, because sometimes the heavier the weight, you'll start to come out of form. There's no shame in that, right? Just like there's no shame in refining your vocal technique or refining your vocal form. I like to say that a little bit better. Refining your vocal form, because that is just such a better way of putting it. And if you take time off, right, you'll have to do that all over again. If you start to go into a little bit of a vocal direction that maybe you didn't want to go to, it'll take some time to get back on. There's absolutely no shame in it. It's muscles, and you could easily fix it with the right instructions, the right exercises, and the right awareness. So I hope this gives you a little bit of food for thought on vibrato and how to think of it in your own voice and your own singing. And if you have any questions, just feel free to shoot me a message and I will try to answer some questions in a future video. I seem to like doing these lives a little bit better than planning out a reel. It's more my thing. But I will see you all soon. Hope you're having a great night, and I'm gonna learn to shut this off right now with the X. Okay.